Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cable 7 and Senior Men's Soccer. Tonight's matchup, Croatia Adria in the white versus Pat Mario's in the blue. My name's John Metcalf. With me this evening, Frank Malvasso, the coach of the Nickel City Lasers and owner of 4 Star Sports. Evening, Frank.
Hi, how's it going?
Very well, very well. Coming into this game, Pat Mario's is kind of on a roll right now. They're going to be advancing to the 4th round of the Ontario Cup on Sunday down in Burlington versus Burlington United. Have you played Pat Mario's yet this year, Frank?
Yes, we have. Actually lost the first game 3-2, I believe, and lost the second game. Actually, one game with it. I believe it was a Charity Cup. Lost the second game 1-0. They're a good team, getting better as the season goes on.
Certainly a lot of veterans on this team as the game's about to get underway. Your referee tonight is Pietro D'Angelo. On the lines, Adel Zaher and Jack Anselmo. We'll set the game up for you as we go on. As a foul's called right away, number 16 Izadan Rubai was whistled for that. And we'll be talking about various players during the match. Adria with the ball, looking down. Mike Svalina with it. Goes back in the middle. Rubai with it. The foul called there. Frank Kuznick, number 16 for Adria. And 2 weeks ago you played Adria and lost 3-2 in a pretty close game. So what do you expect from this game tonight, Frank?
Actually, this is a critical game for Croatia. They've been in a bit of a down spin, and they need this game badly in terms of recovering a bit. This is actually a classical game. What you've got here is Croatia, which is essentially a young team with a lot of skills, techniques, and Pat Mario's, which is sort of the masters with a lot of skills and techniques. So it's a good matchup in that respect, but it's probably a little more crucial for Croatia given their standings.
Well, Croatia dropped a 3-1 decision last week to the Italia Flyers, so they will definitely be looking to rebound. Certainly a factor tonight for Croatia. Adria missing number 5 Kresho Severniak, who's serving some discipline, and we'll discuss that a little later, as I believe we had an illegal throw in there. And Adria will take the ball. It's picked off by Pat Mario's. Carlos Castillo taken back in the middle, sent in, and Joe Hammer will send it forward. Mike Sfalinas heads it. Zvonko Vukovic in the middle to Frank Kuznick. Brent Salem up with it now. Salem looking for a little help. Salem with it. Heels it back, but it's picked up by Rubai. Over to Palladino, back to Rubai. Rubai with 2 other Pat Mario's players. Number 15, Frank Anselmo, down the right side. Anselmo coming in, looking to dribble through, puts it in the box. Andrew Whitson picks it up for Adria, out to Svalina. Svalina looking to send it back to the keeper, Dave Ledger. Certainly one thing about both teams tonight, Frank, we've got a lot of ex-players from the Sudbury United of the Ontario Soccer League last year. Pat Mario's has number 15, Frank Anselmo, and number 16, Izadan Rubai. And for Adria, number 10, Mike Svalina, number 9, Zvonko Vukovic, number 18, Brent Salem, number 1 in goal tonight, Dave Ledger, and of course the aforementioned Mr. Severnak, who is sitting out.
Both teams have a good stack of talent, and I think we should see a good game from a technical perspective.
As Pat Mario sends the ball back to veteran keeper Marino Scarsoloni. He's backstopped them pretty much through the Ontario Cup so far, and I think it sounds like they will certainly have a tough test when they take to the road to play Burlington on Sunday, July 22nd. Palladino with the ball. It goes off of, Felina. He'll throw it in, looking for Frank Cristo. He sends it forward over to Carlos Castillo, but it doesn't get there. Palladino and Vukovic battling for it. Rob Scarsoloni sends it over. George Carlos trying to get that ball for Adria. He can't, as Joe Hammer controls it. It goes into touch, and it will be retained by Pat Mario's.
Notice that Pat Mario's is missing Mario Cherry, who, needless to say, is a major void for them, one of the top scorers in the league and always a threat in front of the net.
From what I understand from manager Bob Segsworth, he is sitting out the last day of a seven-day disciplinary action. Certainly, I guess that's a common problem sometimes in the league. As Zvonko Vukovic has the ball for Adria. Vukovic looking to get in the middle. It's cleared out by Pat Marios. Rubai sending it forward. Dan Palladino with the ball now. Palladino sending it forward, looking for Castillo. Marino de Giacomantonio up with it. He sends it down the line, looking for Carlos Castillo. It goes too far. And there's another player I forgot to mention. Carlos Castillo played a bit with Sudbury United last year, but work commitments forced him to miss about half the season. He is a speedy player. Ball sent forward, looking for Kuznek. It's headed out. Svalina heads it back. Little ping pong there as Dan Palladino picks it up for Pat Marios. Sends it forward. Andrew Whitson heads it out of harm's way. Up to Frank Kuznek. Kuznek dribbling around. Back to Svalina. In the middle. Picked up by Castillo. And it will go back to the keeper, Dave Ledger. Adria with the ball now on that far side. Tony Orser with it in the middle to Svalina. Svalina to Brent Salem. Picked up by De Giacomantonio back in the zone. Hammer picks it up. I'm not sure if this will become a factor, though, Frank. Looking at the Pat Marios bench tonight, they've only got 2 subs, whereas Adria has 4.
It could very well be a factor. Pat Marios, as we said, is an older team, and it may start to show itself in the second half.
Ball's out off of Mike Svalina, and the throw in for Pat Marios. Roy Fabiani in the middle to Cristo. D'Agostino trying to get it out of there. He picks it back up again and sends it back to the keeper, Scarsoloni. Marino came up with a key save for Pat Marios that actually has gotten them into the next round of the Ontario Cup, stopping a penalty kick against Barrie City, preserving a 3-2 victory, and as a result, they will move on. Certainly, I think it's the farthest a Sudbury team has been in the Ontario Cup in the last little while. I couldn't, say exactly. I know last year that Pat Marios, who was Team Toyota, essentially got to the 3rd round and lost to the eventual Ontario Cup and national champion Scarborough Missouri, who have also advanced to the 4th round as well. Brent Salem flicks it forward to the goal, and Scarsoloni throws it immediately to Rubai down the right side. Rubai keeps it in. I think we'll have a verbal warning on that one. Referee Pietro D'Angelo telling Izadin to keep it down a bit.
Croatia looks very intense here, and I think they're very determined to win this game. You can see it in their play, and they're moving around well. I think we'll see a good performance tonight on their behalf.
Coming into this game, they have 1 win, 3 losses, and 3 ties for 5 points. Pat Marios is undefeated so far in league play, but at the present time, I don't believe they're in 1st. I believe Elliott Lake United is, as you mentioned. The only thing that right now, from what I understand, is that Pat Marios have a lot more ties than wins than Elliott Lake United. However, they have defeated Elliott Lake United in league play. Throw in from, sorry, Frank.
That's okay. No, at the top, you're right. At the top end, there's actually a bit of a crowding with respect to points. Elliott Lake's on top, but Pat Marios is there, the Flyers are there, and Corsi Masonry. And I think at best there may be 2 or 3 points spread between them, and still a lot of opportunity to change the standings.
Frank Kuznek with the ball, sends it over. No Croatia players could advance, or else they would have been offside there, and the ball's thrown out quickly to Rob Scarsoloni. Send in the middle to Cristo. Brent Salem and Cristo battle for it. Belgio now with it for Adria. Belgio back to Orser. Send up, and De Giacomantonio intercepts it and sends it right back to the goal. Nice night for soccer here. A little breeze. Rain was in the forecast for tonight, but I think it's pretty well gone as the ball goes forward. Palladino heads it. Fabiani looking for Rubai. It's sent back into the Pat Marios area, and Scarsoloni will put it back into play. Rob Scarsoloni sends it forward. Svalina with it now. Salem in the middle. Going forward, Vukovic can't control it. Gets it back now, chips it forward for George Carlos. Carlos with it on that far side. Carlos trying to get around Joe Hammer, but it will go over the end line and the resulting goal kick.
Again, Croatia seems to be putting on the pressure. They're a little bit more determined. They're moving the ball a little better, and I think they're in a situation where they might be able to capitalize. Still early, still a little bit tense, but they're doing really well.
Scarsoloni puts that ball back into play. Mike Svalina with it now in the middle. Frank Kuznick with it. Kuznick on that, sending it back to Pavlik. Pavlik with it. I believe it was a handball off of Carlos Castillo. Ball's whistled dead. Croatia Adria ball. Andrew Whitson with it. Sends it forward. Little shove in the back there. Mario D'Agostino called for the foul, and Adria will set up a play. I assume it's an indirect, Frank?
It looks that way. He hasn't raised his hands, so we're assuming as such. A shot here virtually at goal would be a long shot, to say the least, especially with a goalie like Marino, who's definitely an asset for Pat Maria.
And Salem sends it up. Good for 3 points if we were playing football, but as a result, it will be a goal kick.
Like I said, that's kind of a low percentage shot. I'm not sure whether the intent was to try to get a rebound or not, but really can't see it at from that distance.
Also coming up on Friday, July 27th, something that I guess we'll talk about here, the Hamilton Steelers of the Canadian Soccer League will be coming up to Sudbury to take on the Sudbury All-Stars. Hamilton Steelers right now, I believe, in 3rd place in the Canadian Soccer League's Eastern Division. Also, actually came off a loss yesterday afternoon, Sunday, July 15th, to the Montreal Supra, who are playing really well in that league right now. And Laurentian's Nick Milanovic, I believe, is playing with the Steelers right now, so we'll probably see him up here this year, or correction, on the 27th. How is that all-star team going to be determined, Frank?
The process that we went through is that each of the senior coaches identified 11 top players, excluding their own, and what's going to happen is that the executive is going to go through the list and essentially try to pick the 16 top players from that. I think it's about as fair as you can get under the circumstances. That's going to be great soccer, and it'll be very nice to see that caliber come back to town.
A couple of years ago, the Toronto Blizzard came up to Sudbury, took on Laurentian in an exhibition match that ended up in a 1-1 draw. But this is an interesting situation because, or a different situation, I should say, because the Steelers are in the middle of their season and they should be in top form. As I mentioned, they've been in the CSL final the last 2 years, only to drop it to the Vancouver 86ers, and they've struggled a bit so far, but when you can bring one of those teams up to Sudbury, it's certainly a treat for soccer fans in the area.
Great opportunity.
President Rubai sends it forward. He was looking for Carlos Castillo or Frank Anselmo, and put it a bit too far. Adria coming back. Frank Kuznick with the ball now. Kuznick sending it forward. Looking for Carlos on that far side. Carlos can't get it. To Giacomo Antonio to Rob Scarsoloni. Scarsoloni and Carlos battling for the ball. Carlos picks it up, heels it back for Orser. In the middle to Beljo. Beljo with it. Dribbling around. Puts it forward. Frank Kuznick gets in there with Scarsoloni. Almost got a hold of that. That's about the only real scoring opportunity we've seen so far, Frank.
Yeah, that's accurate. I think there's still a little bit on the tense side, but I think we're going to see some opportunities develop.
As Adria controls the ball right now. Carlos Castillo, however, picks up for Pat Marios. He loses it to Adrian Beljo. Referee calls play on as Tony Orser ends up with it. Orser on the far side. Orser still dribbling down the sideline, puts it in the middle, looking for Brent Salem. Salem loses it. Castillo loses it to Beljo. Back to Dan Palladino. Palladino flicks it in the middle to Cristo. Mike Svalina now with it. Svalina over to Presot, and he sends it forward. I think they were looking for George Carlos on that, but a little too far for him.
I think they were looking to the right side. They also had Svanko on that end, and as you know, Svanko has the ability to get in there and create havoc in front of the goalie. So I think they were looking for that side.
2 weeks ago, he had 2 goals against you, so
Absolutely.
I think you can attest to that. One on a header in the middle and one on a penalty shot.
Yeah, we made a very major mistake by not covering up and passing back to the goalie when in fact their position was in play, and we paid the ultimate price for it. Not taking anything away from Zvanko, though. We followed Zvanko through his experience with St. Charles last year. Watched most of the games, the Nasa game and the Asa game, and he's truly a kid that has improved. He's really impressed me. I can remember when he was a 10 and 11-year-old, he was always a solid player, but I think he's really come to form in the last year or so.
Certainly his height has its advantages, and he was the place kicker for the St. Charles College football team as well this year. As the corner for Adria, Vukovic, I believe, got the elbow up a little too high there, and the foul was called.
Aggressive there.
When you're that tall, it's kind of hard not to get the elbow in a guy's head, I guess. Scarcelloni will put the ball into play for Pat Marios. Looking for DiGiacomo Antonio. It goes into touch, and Adria will throw it in. Andrew Whitson will throw it in. Rob Scarcelloni flicks it back to Joe Hammer. Hammer sends it forward. Brent Salem with it over to Carlos. Dan Palladino now with it. Palladino coming up the middle. Gets it by, it's Valina. Is it Andrew By sending it forward, looking for Frank Anselmo. Anselmo and Whitson going for it. And Dave Ledger had to be alert on that play as Frank Anselmo was bearing down on him. Adria coming back. Frank Kuznick with it. Kuznick in the middle to Adrian Beljo. Beljo looking for a little room over to Mike Svalina. Svalina retreats a bit. Comes forward again into Frank Kuznick. Mario D'Agostino picks up to Dan Palladino. Palladino looking for Castillo. Orser intercepts. That will go off of Castillo in the touch and the throw-in. So far, I'm not sure if what either team is trying to establish here, Frank.
I think they're just both playing a cautious game. Pat Mario respects the kind of ability that Croatia has, and as I said before, Croatia's in a situation where they need to show something, they need to dominate. And so both teams are being fairly cautious in that respect.
Ball goes into touch off of Carlos, and the throw-in for Pat Marios. Back to Joe Hammer. Hammer, the player coach, is listed on the game sheet tonight for Pat Marios. Teaches up at Laurentian University. Brent Salem with the ball. The cannonading drive didn't get too far. Salem picks it back up again. Salem staying in the middle for Svalina. Svalina with it now. In for Carlos. Carlos looking for Beljo. Beljo gets through. Beljo's held up by Joe Hammer. Croatia Adria looking for a foul there.
Good combination all the way around. Created a real serious threat there.
Rob Scarcelloni now for Pat Marios. Scarcelloni in the middle to Frank Anselmo. Anselmo over for Rubai, out in the touch. Just how much does the absence of Krešo Severnak hurt Croatia Adria tonight?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he is a clutch player for Croatia. A lot of heart and determination. He makes things happen. You'd almost want to say that he could be a 1 or 2 goal factor against or for. He mostly plays as a halfback, but comes up and is a threat. So it's difficult to say, but it's definitely a void for Croatia, no doubt about it.
As Adria will send the ball back to Dave Ledger. Over to Tony Orser. Orser with the ball in the middle to Pressot. Pressot on that far side. In the middle, Kuznick. The whistle on, I believe, Fabiani on the push, and the free kick for Croatia Adria.
Looks as if Pat Mario is just trying to survive. Doesn't seem to be a lot of creativity. It's almost as if they're playing defensive in a way. I'm not sure whether it's the lack of some offensive players like Mario Cherry or whether, as I said before, they truly respect Croatia and are being very careful.
Pressot with the ball. Rubai heads it. Pressot will head it back forward again. Frank Kuznick hits up on his chest. A nice shot by Frank Kuznick, but Marino Scarcelloni had lots of time to see that one develop and made the easy save. Certainly a good piece of ball handling there by Frank Kuznick on that play.
Yes, and Frank is always one of those players that you've got to take a close look at, because he's always there and he can create a lot of havoc.
Certainly in the All-Star game between North Bay and Sudbury, he did that, setting up his friend and neighbor Carlo Castricino.
I was just going to say that is definitely a wicked combination, and if this city ever had the luxury of being able to field an Ontario team of sorts, that would be one of the combinations that we certainly would be looking at.
As Brent Salem tries to get the ball through, it goes into touch off of Pat Marios. Ball coming our way, but we don't want it. And Mike Svalina will make the throw in for Adria. Frank Kuznick ends up with it. Frank Cristo picks up to Giacomo Antonio. Off of Severnak, or correction, off of Severnak. He's not even playing. Off of Vukovic. They're both Croatian. That's the only reason we get them confused.
And not only that, Svanko and Croatia have been playing together for probably the last 7 or 8 years, and it's unusual to see one without the other out there.
As Dan Palladino sends over for Rubai, he can't get a handle on it, and another throw-in will result. We're about 20 minutes in here. Pat Mario 0, Croatia Adria 0. You're watching Senior Men's Soccer on Cable 7. Rubai with correction, TV 7, Cable 7. Well, it's on Channel 7, so big deal. Rubai with it now for Pat Mario, sends it forward. Whitson has it go into touch. He'll look to the keeper, but throw it in. Marino de Giacomo Antonio, a little overzealous in his attempt to get over the ball, over Adrian Belgio for the ball. As a result, the free kick. Andrew Whitson sends it up. D'Agostino heads it over. Can't be saved, and we'll have another throw-in. Salem to Giacomo Antonio with it now. Giacomo Antonio up to Castillo. Castillo to Cristo. Cristo to Anselmo. Anselmo looking for a little help. And the offside flag came up there. Kind of a strange call, because Croatia Adria already had possession of the ball. Shouldn't that be a no call, Frank?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a delayed reaction. He was reacting actually to a forward movement there, but as you suggest, I think it was a bit premature. And maybe technically not even offside.
Whitson with the ball now for Adria. Palladino with it. To Giacomo Antonio. Belgio. Belgio moving up. Looking for a little help. Sends it wide for Kuznick. Kuznick keeps it in, but can't keep under control. Fabiani sends it to Hammer. Hammer safely sends it back to the keeper. Thrown forward for Palladino. Palladino forward for Anselmo. Svalina picks that up. Svalina wheeling around. Up to Kuznick. And Dan Palladino sends it into touch. Certainly, Pat Mario is very, very conscious at this time. You almost wonder if it's going to cost them in the next little while, because I would think it would give Adria confidence to attack more, press more, and something might happen.
Absolutely, they're almost playing as if they had a 1 or 2 goal lead and were just attempting to defend. And I think at this juncture in the game, that kind of play is kind of dangerous.
As Tony Orser picks it off of Carlos Castillo, Orser with the ball now. He's got Vukovic and, Kuznick. Nice defensive play by Hammer there. Hammer ends up taking away from Carlos and sends the danger to Giacomo Antonio into the middle. Cristo. Anselmo with it now. Salem picks it up. And Frank Anselmo a little aggressive there, to say. And the free kick will result.
Frank's one of those players that always gives 100%, and he's always in the play. And actually, in terms of this evening's game, if Pat Marios does have a threat, it'll likely come in the form of Frank.
Ball sent forward. Salem flicks it, and it goes over the line. Scarcelloni quickly puts it back into play to Giacomo Antonio. In the middle for Rob Scarcelloni. Back up to Giacomo Antonio. To Giacomo Antonio. And it goes out of touch off of Belgio. Oh, correction, off of the Giacomo Antonio. And the resulting throw-in for Adria. Pressot with the throw-in. It's still out of touch off of Mario D'Agostino. And Adria will try it again, just a tad closer though. Once again, looking down that sideline, George Carlos with it. Carlos chips into the middle. Frank Kuznick heads it. And it goes over the end line, and it will be a goal kick. Not a bad play there, really, by Adria on that one.
Yeah, that's a half effort. You can't say it was a major threat, but it shows that in fact Croatia Adria can get inside the box and can at least get in position. We haven't seen that from Pat Marios at all.
No, it's certainly more play to our left right now than anywhere else on the field. Wearing a bit more of a path in an already worn field, I think we could say. As the ball sent back to Dave Ledger on one of those few forays into the Adria zone. Whitson with it. Having a bit of a problem there as Pressot ends up with it. Play on. Orser with it now. Orser sends it down. Looking for Carlos. Belgio ends up with it in the middle. Belgio with a little room. Up to the side for Pressot. Pressot now with it. Pressot sends it across. Looking for Zvonko Vukovic, and Scarcelloni easily handles that one. Certainly, I noticed in the game against Nickel City, against your team 2 weeks ago, that is what Adria did a lot of. Long balls looking for Zvonko, and that's really the first time they've done that tonight. Obviously, they're looking to establish something a little different. Yeah,
Croatia has the kind of players that they can move the ball around. They're individually, they're very talented. They can be very confident, and that needless to say, is to their advantage. And if they play that kind of a game, I think they can do well. I think when they get a little panicky and whatnot, they start to look at the long balls. Having said that, though, those long balls sometimes can be dangerous, especially if you've got somebody like Zvonko up there.
That's true. As Vukovic has it go into touch off of him. Rubai for the throw-in. He'll hand it off to Fabiani. The throw. Dan Palladino with it. Palladino. Anselmo. Fabiani coming up. Sends it forward. Surrounded by Adria. And sent back to the keeper. Dave Ledger looking to set it up here. Just boots it forward. Frank Kuznick with it. Off of his foot. Rubayan with it. Now Svalina. Svalina into the middle. A little room. Svalina to Belgio. Belgio forward. Belgio has it go off his hand. D'Agostino up to Cristo. Cristo. Anselmo. Palladino. Into touch off of Pavlik. And the throw-in. Cristo with it. Pressot now for Adria. Fabiani. Brent Salem, a little bit of back and forth there. Hammer and Vukovic looking for it. And Hammer controls it. Svalina ends up with it. Svalina coming across the middle. Belgio. Belgio into the middle. Hammer again. So far in this game, Joe Hammer has been basically the last line of defense for Pat Marios, and has come up big a couple of times.
He's been in the right spot at the right time, and he doesn't hesitate. He just clears the ball, and that's the right thing to do at the time.
Rubai with it now for Pat Marios. Rubai Loses it to Beljo. Beljo and Rubai battling for it. And the whistle blows, and it will be Pat Mario's. D'Agostino forward. Whitson heads it out. Svalina and Palladino going after it. It goes into touch. And the foul is called against Adria. And the free kick for Pat Mario's. Certainly colorful uniforms Pat Mario's have tonight.
Black and blue. It looks kind of impressive. I personally like the white socks and the white pants they also have as well. We can get into a bit of a fashion show here.
There you go. Certainly soccer has some bright outfits, as DiGiacomo Antonio sends the ball into the Adria zone, far wide of the net, and Adria will keep it in play. Svalina in the middle looking for Salem. Salem sends it looking for Kuznik. Fabiani heads it into the zone. Dan Palladino, surrounded by two players, gets it free, and he gets tackled roughly on that one, and I think we're going to have a booking here right now, Frank.
It looks that way, and it looks like he legitimately got clipped there. Although I must say that if there's one thing the World Cup has certainly taught us, maybe in a negative sense, it's how to take a dive. It's almost become an art.
Well,
I'm not saying at all that Mr. Palladino is doing that right now. He clearly is not, but I think that's one of the aftermath of a World Cup series that happens every 4 years and begins to set the trend of it, or at least change the trend with respect to certain things. And that's definitely one thing, one negative aspect that was picked up from the World Cup.
Number 19, Nick Pavlik is booked on that play. Dan Palladino is up, working the kinks out. Referee Pietro D'Angelo having a little discussion with the Adria bench. And this is really, I think you could say, the first legitimate possibility that Pat Mario's have at a shot on goal. As Mario D'Agostino chips it forward, it's headed by Frank Anselmo just wide. A nice play by Pat Mario's there, Frank.
And as you said, John, it was probably their one and only opportunity. But as you saw there, it was an excellent opportunity. As a matter of fact, probably should have scored if in fact he would have got a little bit more header on the ball.
That's true. Frank Anselmo certainly did his utmost to get into that ball. And the goal kick by Pressot for Adria. They're looking to set things up there. Vukovic doesn't quite get to him as Palladino sends over to Giacomo Antonio in the middle. Whitson with it now. Whitson sends it back. It doesn't look like a good play. Frank Anselmo. And actually, interestingly enough, a situation where Adria has controlled the play up to this point. They got a little careless sending the ball back to the keeper. Frank Anselmo was Johnny on the spot essentially there. Raced in and banked it off the post. It's 1-0 for Pat Mario's.
And how many times do you see that in any kind of team play where you have one team dominating, the other team comes back and in one occasion can do that to you? I think that's going to change the complexion of the game. I hate to say that now, but if in fact Pat and Mario was successful in being defensive up to this point in the game, they're probably going to be even more effective. So the pressure gets even more heavier on Croatia in terms of being able to burst the bubble that they're in right now with respect to not getting up there in the standings where they belong.
Beljo sends over for Tony Orser. Orser down the far sideline. Orser still with it. In the middle for Salem. Salem looking for a little help there. Someone should move to him, and no one does. And Cristo and Anselmo take it away from him. Rubai with it now. Rubai and Anselmo. Anselmo picks it up. Anselmo loses it. Beljo picks it up, chips it forward. Fabiani and Frank Kuznik in there. Kuznik, Mike Svalina, but the keeper, Scarcelloni, up there quickly to smother the chance as Palladino has it now for Pat Mario's. Sending it forward for Castillo. It's off of Pressot. It will go into touch. No, Tony Orser keeps it in play. It's off of Castillo. Whitson with it now. Whitson in the middle to Beljo. Back to Orser. Orser with it. Looking to move it up. Svalina with it. Svalina. Beljo. Beljo sends it forward. Vukovic chipping it forward looking for Kuznik. Kuznik Can't get to go any further as Hammer clears it. Palladino now with it. Palladino coming down the side into Anselmo. Anselmo places it off of Pavlik. In the middle now to Svalina. Hammer and Fabiani. A little miscommunication there as Frank Kuznick gets in there, but he loses it. Fabiani recovers and clears the area. Pavlik can't get it to go up. Palladino now with it. Frank Anselmo. Palladino looking for Carlo Castillo. Castillo, he can move. Castillo and Orser on that far side. It will go over the end line. It will be a corner kick. And that was a case of Pat Mario's looking for that long ball with Carlos Castillo. More than one opportunity or time last year with Sudbury United, that was one of their plays using Carlos' quickness and speed.
That was an excellent setup by Danny Palladino. I mean, he just put it right behind the defenders in the area that he had to. Just an excellent pass.
Pat Mario's are setting up for their second corner kick of this first half. They lead 1-0 at the present time. Senior men's soccer on TV7. A low ball and a whistle in the box. I believe it hit a hand, if I'm not mistaken, Frank, and as a result, Adria dodged a bit of a bullet there.
They certainly did. I gathered it hit one of the Pat Mario players, but I'll tell you, had it not, that would have been a very dangerous situation.
As Belgio is having problems, he sends it over to Orser. Orser with it now, back to Belgio. Belgio turns over the far side for Pavlik. Pavlik now looking for a little room, setting up. D'Agostino picks it off. D'Agostino on a little run. Nice move by Mario D'Agostino. D'Agostino on Whitson. Loses his footing but maintains possession. D'Agostino and Whitson still battling it out. Nice play by Andrew Whitson there. Nice little run there by Mario D'Agostino.
Yeah, he did extremely well to almost get into the box and almost create an opportunity there. I'm impressed. The reason why I say that is that some of these players are a little bit older, and you always wondered about their ability to surge forward. But there's a good example of where it can be done.
Tony Orser trying to go down that far sideline, and the ball is pushed into touch, and Adria will have the throw-in in the Pat Mario zone.
You can almost sense the game is kind of evened up a little bit, where Croatia was more of a threat in the first part of this half. They've seemed to have petered off a little bit, maybe because of the goal, but they don't seem to be as confident as they were at the outset.
Rob Scarcelloni sends the ball to the other side. Rubai picks up now for Pat Mario's to Fabiani. Fabiani up to Anselmo. Belgio picks that off. Belgio up to Svalina. Svalina chips it into Frank Kuznick. Kuznick looking for George Carlos. Carlos trying to reach that ball, and he can't quite get there. Good idea on Croatia Adria's part that time.
Yeah, it was a nice pass to the wing, and had he been a little bit further ahead in terms of 1 or 2 steps, I think he would have had a foot on that ball.
Pressot and DiGiacomo battling for the ball. DiGiacomo sends it back. I think he was looking for Scarcelloni there, and it hit Joe Hammer, and it will go over that end line. And Croatia Adria will have their second corner kick opportunity. Certainly a bit of a break for them. They're looking to get back into this one. They're down 1-0 at the present time.
Yeah, and this game's not over by a long shot. It's just a question of confidence, determination, and that's what they've got to show right now, that they have the ability to get back, and they've just got to dedicate themselves to that.
George Carlos sends it in the middle. Frank Kuznick flicked it over, but harmlessly fell into the hands of the keeper there, and the ball is booted forward. Andrew Whitson now for Adria. Rob Scarcelloni picks that off. Belgio with it over to Carlos. Carlos to Vukovic. Vukovic has the wayward ball go, and Joe Hammer heads it forward. Carlos Castillo called on the foul there. And the free kick for Croatia Adria.
It's very quiet out in the field, John, and I think that's an indicator of what's happening emotionally in terms of Croatia.
As Pavlik has it now for Adria. Pavlik looking for Vukovic. He retains possession. Svalina with it. I've just been corrected. Sorry, it is Nikki Pavasic. I just have to go by Jimmy McPherson's writing here on the game sheet. It's difficult to read. Tony Orser with the ball now for Adria. DeGiacomo Antonio picks it off. And the flag goes up. That's about only our first or second offside. Certainly in the game 2 weeks ago, there were lots of those.
Yeah, they're playing a little bit more control. Mind you, there was 2 players clearly offside there.
Frank
and
Anselmo
did a good job of setting up the offside.
And Andrew Whitson will put it back into play for Adria. Pavasic with it now. Pavasic. Beljo now. Kuznek looking to send it forward. Almost went through there.
This is dangerous.
Svanko gets it. Nice save by Scarcelloni. It's back in. Frank Kuznek just heads it wide. Nice opportunity there for Croatia Adria.
Good effort. That was a good effort all around by 2 or 3 players there, including Frank and Svanko, and that's the kind of opportunities that they've got to create. Actually, that little spurt there could do a lot in terms of gaining confidence.
It certainly shows that Pat Mario's defense is not without its kinks, I guess we could say. And Scarcelloni will send it in for Pat Mario's. Castillo ends up with it, sends it into touch. Orser will go and get it and set up for the throw-in. Not much time left here in the first half. Pat Mario's are leading 1-0. Orser with the throw-in. Cristo gets up there to head away, but Rob Scarcelloni sends up to Andrew Whitson. Whitson being marked by Frank Anselmo. Nice turn by Whitson. Whitson with it now. He loses it to Frank Cristo. Cristo against Dave Ledger one-on-one, and he blasts it right at him. Nice save by Dave Ledger there. Palladino with it. Palladino keeps on the ground, but I think Dan was a little worried about, in fact, I think his teammates were offside on that play. But the ball goes over the line, and it will be a goal kick. Certainly a good little flurry of action there for Pat Mario's.
And that was definitely a defensive error. I mean, actually, it's almost reminiscent of the first goal on this side, where the defender had an opportunity to clear the ball, but whether it was the pressure or the anxiety and whatnot, failed to do that. And that clearly almost resulted in a 2-0 game.
Pressot sends it up. Pushing there, and it'll be a free kick for Adria. Belja with it, puts it into play quickly up to Carlos. Carlos with it now. Carlos over to Kuznik. Kuznik on that far side, sending it in the middle, looking for Vukovic. And DeGiacomo Antonio clears it out to Rubai. Rubai chips it up. Pavasic over to Pressot. Beljo with it now. Beljo back to Whitson. Whitson sends it forward. Hammer. Carlos, nice move. Carlos in the middle for Vukovic. Frank Kuznik with it. Couldn't get enough leather on it. Cristo now. Pressot with it. Brent Salem now over to Carlos. Carlos, Frank Kuznik trying to control it, get the shot on net. Svalina with it. Kuznik, Fabiani ends up with it. Nothing comes of that, and it will be cleared into touch. I think Coach Jimmy McPherson was looking for a handball there.
Yeah, and it's really hard to say at this point whether it was the face, a bit of the arm, or the hand. It's hard to say.
Certainly a good flurry of action there by Croatia Adria there as the ball's tipped back in, and Scarcelloni will put it back into play for Pat Mario's.
Referee's looking at his watch, so I suspect that we've got very little in terms of time left in this first half.
As Pressot picks it off, Salem sends it forward, looking for Vukovic. Vukovic and Carlos up on the ball now. Vukovic struggling a bit for control. Beljo, and an offside call.
That was almost an unavoidable offside. Svanko created the play on the one side. It was just unfortunate that he was still but a couple of yards offside, but that was the best he could do under the circumstance.
I think him losing control there didn't help the cause either. And Pat Mario's, well, I'm quite sure be content to try to ride out whatever time is remaining in the first half here. Ball sent back to the keeper. And he'll send it up. Castillo heads it forward. Belgio ends up with it. Pavasic with it now. Pavasic to Kuznik. Kuznik trying to create some room there. Kuznik sending it forward, looking for Carlos. Carlos, Scarcelloni marking him, and he couldn't control it. Palladino now for Pat Marios. Palladino sends it forward, looking to outrun Pressot. Pressot and Palladino still going at it. Palladino looking for a little support. Pressot ends up with it. It stays in play. Whitson has it. Whitson and I'm not sure who was there for Pat Marios. Maybe it was Dan again. I'm sorry about that, Dan Palladino. And as a result, Pat Marios will have the corner kick, their third of this first half.
Danny did well to work it all the way up the sideline there. He unfortunately was in a situation where he was the only person attacking, and at the time sort of mitigated against him in terms of more players come on him.
To Giacomo Antonio sending into the middle there. Orser heads it out. Rob Scarcelloni with it now. Chips it up. And we are at halftime here at Queens Athletic Field. Pat Marios 1, Croatia Adria no score. We'll be back in a moment with the second half.
Muscles in action. Lifting, pulling, propelling. Now imagine them getting weaker, wasting away. You've got it, muscular dystrophy. But today there's new hope. You can support Canadian researchers who have discovered the cause, who are seeking a cure for muscular dystrophy. Please give generously to the Muscular Dystrophy Association of Canada.
Welcome back to Queens Athletic Field. Second half action. Senior men's soccer here on TV7. Pat Marios are up 1-0 heading in to this second half. Frank, a quick overview of that first half?
Well, essentially what we saw is Croatia looking fairly strong, dominating at times, looking as if they were going to do something. And then the old proverbial one opportunity translates into one goal for Pat Marios. Seemed to change the course of the half a little bit in terms of Croatia seeming to back off a little bit. But mind you, later on in the half, Croatia started to mount their attacks again. So it's going to be interesting. I think the first 15-20 minutes of this half are going to be very crucial. Needless to say, if Pat Marios gets another goal, it's going to put Croatia in the hole. And a goal here by Croatia will certainly allow them to sort of remount the confidence and the kind of aggressiveness and ability they had in the first half. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah,
we had one substitution at the half there. Castillo comes away with it on the long ball for Pat Marios. A weak shot, easily handled by Dave Ledger. Number 17, Americo Tantalo, is now in the game for Pat Marios. He replaces number 2, Roy Fabiani. And while we were away at halftime there, we got the standings updated for us, and we'll pass those on to you during the course of the telecast. I don't know if we touched on this in the first half, but last night, Sunday, July 15th, there were 2 games in the Senior Men's Soccer League. Elliott Lake United maintained their first place hold with a 3-1 win over Corsi Masonry. Mike Smith, Paul Manuel, and Leroy Brown scored for LA Lake, while Corsi Masonry goal was scored by Nico. The second game saw your Nickel City Lasers defeat CS Italia 5-3. Obviously, defense wasn't a forte of that game, eh, Frank?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, they were almost scoring at will at one point in the game.
Scoring for Nickel City, Mikoki Abrams and Emil Malvaso. Any relation, Frank? With two
Yeah.
each?
I wonder. Actually, last broadcast I heard you call him Frank Anselmo.
That's right.
Frank Malvaso.
Okay, I admit that I blew it. And also with a single for Nickel City last night, Dallas Detilio. For CS Italia, Khaled Mujber with all 3 goals. So obviously he had a good night. And the updated standings, including those games of the 15th, see Elliott Lake United on top now with a record of 6 wins, 1 loss for 12 points. Second place right now, the Italia Flyers. They're 4 wins, 2 losses, 2 ties for 10 points. Then you have a tie for 3rd spot, but you would give the spot to Pat Mario's right now on lesser games played. They've played 6 games and they have 3 wins, no losses, and 3 ties for 9 points. And Corsi Masonry has 4 wins, 3 losses, and a tie for 9 points. Then you go down to the Nickel City Lasers, who are 2-5-1 for 5 points, and Croatia Adria are 1-3-3 for 5 points. And on the bottom of the standings right now, CS Italia, they're winless, 6 losses and 2 ties for 2 points. So certainly up top, as you mentioned, it's very close, and it's going to be interesting come the remainder of the season. I believe Pat Mario still have to make their visit to Elliott Lake. I know that the Italia Flyers already have been up there, and I do believe they ended up with a loss. Elliott Lake's only loss was to Pat Mario's back on Canada Day. So it should be interesting when we get down further into the season, Frank.
Yeah, it's almost as if it was 2 groupings or 2 divisions. You see Pat Mario, the Flyers, Corsi Masonry, and LA Lake being very, very tightly matched. And as you said, it's a situation where almost any one of those teams can dominate. LA Lake is certainly an all-around team, and they probably deserve to be in first place. But there's a few more games left in the season, and I truly believe it could go anyway in terms of who ultimately comes up on top.
Certainly when Pat Mario's go up to Elliott Lake, that will be one of the most interesting games of the season, I think. And Elliott Lake will still have to travel down to Sudbury, I believe, to play Italia Flyers. Obviously a big win yesterday for Elliott Lake over Corsi Masonry, so they still maintain that first place hold, and this is their first year in the league, is it not?
It is, and they've done extremely well. As I said, they've got an excellent team, solid all the way around, and properly they deserve to be in first place.
Tantalo has the ball go off of his foot. He's looking for the opportunity with Rubai. Rubai with the cross. It's nice and low. And the goal, number 9, Carlos Castillo. And yes, it is in the net. There was a question there from Croatia Adria, and now it is 2-0 for Pat Mario's. And I do believe that certainly it will be very difficult for Croatia to come back on this one.
Very, very critical goal. No, I guess he's calling...
He's calling a handball.
It's not a goal.
Sorry, it is not a goal, so we are still at 1-0.
Nothing.
I wasn't sure of the signal there, but when he pointed his hand in that direction, I thought he was pointing to center field.
Right, John. It looked like as if he was calling a goal there.
And the whistle on the foul there on Frank Cristo. He's appealing to the official's decision there, but the free kick will go for Croatia Adria. Salem with it, looking for Vukovic. It's picked up, and Giacomo Antonio with a glaring handball, I think we could call that. He couldn't hide it on that one.
Right. Croatia got a bit of a reprieve there, and let's see if they can turn it around, because as I said, it could have been a critical situation for them.
As Brent Salem sends the ball forward, Andrew Whitson heads it up, and Zvonko Vukovic was in there dangerously. Interesting, Andrew Whitson has moved up in this half. Seen him up in the offensive zone a couple of times, and the offside is called there on Pat Mario's. So I guess Croatia is coming with a bit of a different strategy this half.
Needless to say, they're trying to create a little bit more offense and create a situation where they can possibly pose as a threat. As they do that, though, they also are giving up some of their defensive posture, and that always is could lead to a mistake or a situation where they're outmanned in terms of their end, and that could be disastrous as well.
As the ball is into the Adria zone, Americo Tantalo trying to get a hold of it, and he can't quite get to it. Interesting that we haven't seen any substitutions yet for Croatia Adria so far. Number 3, Amit Garg. Number 12, Joe Snoffel. Number 7, Mike Butrajak. And number 17, John Svalina are all on the bench tonight for Croatia Adria. Andrew Whitson battling for the ball. Palladino now with it into the middle for Christo. Christo blasts away, and it goes wide to the left, and it will be the goal kick.
It's a difficult situation for a coach. Generally speaking, a coach wants to play all of his players, and if the opportunity was to be there for them, he would certainly do that. However, in a clutch game like this, where one goal is the difference, it's hard to play everybody, especially when the players on the field are playing relatively well.
And Pressad has the ball kind of shank off of his foot there, and Pat Marios catches a bit of a break there as they'll have the throw in in the Adria end. Frank Anselmo looking for Castillo. Castillo heads it and goes into touch off of him. One added note to the league standings, the leading scorer, which I don't think is anyone's surprise so far, number 10 from the Italia Flyers, Carlo Castrocino with 10. Apparently his next closest pursuers have 4 each, and we weren't sure who they were, but nonetheless, Carlos Castrocino is proving to be the Scalacci of the Senior Men's Soccer League, looking for that golden boot.
And I think he's been in that position for a couple of years. Carlo has just one of these uncanny abilities to put the ball in the net. I don't know whether it's a gift, a talent, or whatnot, probably a combination of both of them, but he definitely has it. There's no doubt about it.
Certainly was an important factor for the Laurentian Soccer Voyageurs this past year, and I'm quite sure Coach Greg Zorbas will be looking for very big things from Carlos this year. In addition, as we mentioned earlier in the telecast, Hamilton Steelers coming up to Sudbury on Friday, July the 27th, and striker Nick Milanovic, who plays for Laurentian and is with the Steelers right now, they will form a very unbeatable duo for Laurentian this fall. Rob Scarcelloni and Frank Kuznick going for the ball. Whistle for a foul there, I do believe, and it will be a free kick for Pat Marios. Well, it's sent back to the keeper, so I'm assuming that's how they decide to play it.
Getting back to Laurentian, I think Greg Zorbas deserves a lot of credit. He's been able to mold some excellent teams, which is exceptional considering where we are geographically in this province and the size of our university. He's done just a fantastic job. He's always been a contender, and as we saw last year, almost took the whole thing.
Well, certainly they'll be back in the thick of it again this year, and I think you know, given the fact that teams like Toronto, Laurier have a lot of Canadian Soccer League players playing for their clubs, and Greg and his Chargers certainly proved everyone wrong by taking the Ontario title this year. Belgio with the ball now for Adria. Belgio loses control. Castillo picks up. Christo sends it over forward. Brent Salem with a wobbly type kick that goes into touch, and Frank Anselmo will throw it in for Pat Marios. As we mentioned, Pat Marios will be traveling down to Burlington to take on Burlington United on Sunday, July the 22nd, and I think they'll definitely have their work cut out for them when they go down for that match.
I think they will. I think this will probably be their greatest test, but you still got to give them credit. They got into the quarterfinals. They're an older team. Granted, they're very experienced, got excellent goaltending, a lot of good players. They've done extremely well, and they deserve all the credit they get.
And certainly, as we mentioned, the fact that Mario Chiri is missing for them tonight, he will be back off his suspension tomorrow, as Americo Tantalo has the ball now for Pat Marios. Nice save by Dave Ledger. Rubai with it now. Rubai looking to get it in there, but he was waiting for Tantalo to get back out and not be offside, and as a result, the ball goes into the goal.
good classical kinds of challenge. The striker having a situation where he could potentially score, and the goalie coming out to challenge and meeting the test.
Since Tintalo came in, that's his second solid attempt in this second half for Pat Marios. They're leading 1-0 here. We're about 10 minutes into the second half of this contest. Pat Marios leading 1-0 on TV7, your community sports channel.
I haven't seen much of Amerigo Tintalo this year. I think I've only seen him maybe two or three games at the very most. But last year he clearly was a threat. He's a very aggressive player, very fast, and it can truly help Pat Marios out here. I'm not sure what kind of shape he's in. Mind you, the last two chances there, he looks like he still has the ability. But an excellent player.
As Dave Ledger sends the ball forward for Adria, Christo sends it back for Pat Marios. Orser sends it back to Pressot. It's in the middle now for Belgio. Belgio looking ahead, looking for George Carlos. Frank Anselmo pulled up on that play. He is limping a bit. Something obviously happened there. And Mario D'Agostino will get out of harm's way for Pat Marios. I'm not sure what happened there.
Looks like he might have pulled a muscle,
a cramp.
Stepped to one of our more softer spots on the field, to say the least.
Well, certainly I think we discussed that issue at length on our last telecast. Certainly the showcase field for the city, and just looking at it, Sudbury Spartans game here last Saturday and soccer here a great deal of the time, and obviously I hope, I haven't seen all the contents of the leisure plan report from Chairman Dick DiStefano's committee, but certainly it begs that this facility, which is supposed to be our showcase field, has to have some work on it. Carlos Castillo with the ball in the middle for Pat Marios. Dan Palladino misfires. Rubai picks it up now. Rubai keeps it in around Svalina. Rubai looking to get it across. He's being watched by Pafazic. DeJacomo Antonio with it now. He blasts away. It goes off of Orser. Headed by DeJacomo Antonio. Andrew Whitston tries to get it out. Frank Anselmo picks it up. He's not looking none the worse for wear now. And he chips it over and into touch. Still a little limping there on Frank's part, but on that one play he didn't look too bad. Right now Amit Garg is warming up for Adria, so we may be seeing him in the game soon. Hammer clears it out of harm's way. Tintalo now. Salem picks it up. Back for Pressot. Pressot will not play it back to the keeper as I thought he might. He'll just continue on. Looking up for Carlos. Carlos back for Orser. Orser can't keep control, and Pat Marios will have the throw-in.
I've seen that Frank Anselmo has been moved back into a fullback position, and it looks like maybe Pat Marios is attempting to defend this 1-point lead.
Certainly, I'm quite sure they would be quite content to do that at this point now. Adria has not really attacked that aggressively here in the second half. All the action being mostly in the Croatia-Adria end for Pat Marios, as Frank Kuznick comes up with the ball. Kuznick and Rubai battling for it. It goes into touch, and Pat Marios will have the throw-in. Rob Scarcelloni into Palladino. Palladino with it now. Looking for Castillo, and it's a bit too far. Dave Ledger will come out. Salem now. Salem chips it out, trying to get it up to Orser, but it goes into touch. Pat Marios, I think, being a little more aggressive here early in the second half, Frank.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit surprised, because I think had we tried to anticipate what was going to happen, we would anticipate that maybe Pat Marios would slow down a bit. But to their credit, they seem to be just as strong and as fresh as Croatia.
As D'Agostino now has it. He tries to play it back for DeJacomo Antonio, and it goes off of Adria, and the throw-in for Pat Marios. Looks like we're going to have a substitution here now for Pat Marios. Frank Anselmo is down once again, and number 2, Roy Fabiani, will come in to replace him. I imagine he'll just replace Frank at a fullback spot there. Frank looking a little ginger right now as Cristo now has it. De Giacomo. Castillo came back instead of going forward for that ball, and he'll go over the line, and the goal kick for Croatia Adria. We're about 15 minutes into the second half. Pat Mario's 1, Croatia Adria 0, and as mentioned, Amit Garg will now check in for Croatia Adria, number 3, as well as number 7, Mike Butrajak. And coming off, number 22, George Carlos, and number 13, Tony Orser. Tony's certainly been solid there tonight.
Yeah, he's played extremely well. As a matter of fact, the change is a little bit of a mystery to me. I think what maybe Croatia needs is some offensive threat. But maybe it's just an opportunity to get more of the players on the field.
Dangerous kick called against Pat Mario's there. Adria looking to set up something on this play. Mike Svalina setting things up for Adria. Sends it forward, looking for Kuznik. It's put out of harm's way. Tintalo and Castillo together right now. Tintalo looking up for Rubai. Rubai running underneath that ball. Rubai with it now. Nice chip to keep control of it, but he loses control that time. Rubai and Pressad are battling for it, and it will go back to Dave Ledger, who sends it back out to Andrew Whitson. Whitson and Cristo collide. Palladino and Whitson now picks it up over the far side, looking for Frank Kuznik. I think you can tell there's a little frustration on Adria's part, trying to get that ball out wide, and it's either too long or whoever receives it isn't controlling it. And certainly you're not going to get towards the goal if you don't control the ball.
Yeah, and unfortunately the pressure causes a little greater anxiety, and that makes you prone for some errors. It's kind of unfortunate because Croatia has an excellent team. They've got some good players. I think the expectations were very high for this team, and rightly so in terms of their good standing last year, plus the acquisition of the 5 OSL players. But nonetheless, they're still a young team. I think their executive has to be patient with them. Jimmy is an excellent coach, and they'll come around. There's no doubt about it. They will come around. They will be a contender.
Hammer keeps the ball away from Belgio there. Hammer sends it right back to Marino Scarcelloni. He sends it forward, looking for Tintalo. I think Tintalo just a little over aggressive there after the ball went by.
Bit of a collision. I don't think it was intentional. It was one of those situations where both players wanting to win the ball and doing a little bit to not necessarily obstruct the other player, but get the advantage on the other player.
As a result of the whistle, it will be Croatia Adria on the free kick. Brent Salem will take care of that chore. He sends it forward. Frank Kuznik heads it forward. D'Agostino heads it back out. Rubai back. Kuznik now for Adria. Up for Vukovic. Vukovic can't keep a hold on it. D'Agostino loses it to Vukovic. Vukovic trying to bend it into the middle. And De Giacomo has it now for Pat Marios. He sends it up for Dan Palladino. Palladino can't get by Pavasic, and Pavasic sends it into touch. Almost a situation there. If Pavasic didn't touch that ball, Frank, that Pat Marios was on a bit of a break.
Yeah, Danny was streaking down that wing, and actually that was all that Nick could do, was just sort of stop the advance there, and he did well in doing that.
As the ball is controlled by Adria right now, Belgio with it. Belgio gives it to Kuznik. Kuznik still struggling a bit with it, and it's off of Pat Marios. And right now I think you could say safely that Pat Marios is quite content to have the ball played the way it is going right now. The ball's not coming into their end, and they'll quite happily try to control that midfield area so it doesn't come back.
Yeah, and the other part of their game is if they're not totally sure of being able to control the ball, they just simply get rid of it or move it out of touch or whatever. And that puts even greater pressure on Croatia to be accurate and precise with respect to whatever they do with the ball in terms of moving it around or trying to create a scoring opportunity.
Pat Marios will go for the throw-in. Rob Scarcelloni sends it up for Carlos Castillo. Castillo and Pavasic battle for it, and it goes into touch, and once again Pat Marios will have the throw-in just a little deeper into Adria territory. Looks like Rob Scarcelloni's retying his boot over there before the ball comes into play, and he comes back. The throw, Rubai flicks it forward. Dave Ledger on the ball quickly, sends out to Amit Garg, number 3. Garg with it. Garg in the middle to Whitson. Whitson and Palladino battling for it. Tantalo joins the fray and picks up the foul call, and as a result, Adria will have the free kick. Brent Salem sending it forward again. Adrian Belgio with it. Flicks it up for Frank Kuznick. Kuznick and Mario D'Agostino battling for it. Kuznick and Rubai battling for it. Izadin goes it down.
Again, there, I think we're starting to see some of the frustration, not intentional, but a situation where when things are not going well, they just get progressively worse.
As the saying goes, if it weren't for bad luck, Adria might not have any luck at all. It's 1-0, Pat Marios here on TV7. The free kick for Pat Marios. Mario D'Agostino sends it forward looking for Tantalo. Tantalo catches up with it, but a little too far in the angle there, as Danny Galvin might say, an acute angle and not a high percentage shot, and the goal kick for Croatia Adria. And it looks like we're going to have a substitution here again for Pat Marios. Number 5, Rob McTaggart checks in. He replaces number 9, Carlos Castillo. So Pat Marios has gone to the bench. Andrew Whitson now controlling it for Adria, in the middle for Kuznick. Kuznick forward. He was looking for Amit Garg. And the ball almost comes to our broadcast location. The throw in for Pat Marios, Roy Fabiani. And the throw was not a legal one, and as a result, the ball gets turned over to Croatia Adria. Svalina with the throw. Fabiani heads it back. Rob McTaggart within the middle now. Over to Frank Cristo. Cristo forward for Tantalo. Tantalo gets by Pavasic. Pavasic now with it. Tangling with Rubai. Pavasic still going. He keeps it in, and he loses control of it. And the ball goes into touch off of him, and the throw in for Pat Marios. Good little piece of running there by Nick Pavasic, but I guess he lost a bit of momentum there.
And I think he had the right intention there. There's not a lot of threat that is coming from the midfield, and maybe it's an opportunity for one of the fullbacks to run in and sort of pick up some of that slack. I think at this point in the game, though, and Croatia has to rely on some of their leaders, and we're talking really people like Zvanko and Frank and Andrew. They're in a situation now where they're excellent players. They certainly can score, and that's what's got to happen here for them.
And the foul called there on Pat Marios. Adrian Belgio goes down, and we are going to have a book. I believe number 16, Izadan Rubai, is going to receive the card. And as a result, there will be the free kick for Croatia Adria. Just we've been talking about Pat Marios and the Ontario Cup. I think we should congratulate the under-13 team and the under-11 team. I'm not sure what teams they are, but they won their last round matches in Ontario Cup action. The under-11 team traveled down south and won their game 1-0. And the under-13 team, I heard, had a really tough game when their opponents decided not to show.
It's just a question of being intimidated by the caliber and abilities of what we have in Sudbury. No, that's a curiosity, John. I think that is not going to stand the other team very well in terms of future Ontario Cups, having a host team wait for you, like with no notice of the fact that you're not showing up. So it'd be interesting to see what develops there.
Yeah, certainly. I think the Ontario Soccer Association, a nice shot there by Adrian Belgio, the save by Marino Scarcelloni, and the ball's cleared out. Pavicic with it. Pavicic and Rob McTaggart collide, and the ball will be for Croatia. Adria on the throw-in. Dan Palladino picks up for Pat Marios. Rubai with it now, sending down the side for Americo Tintalo. Tintalo's in all alone. Tintalo chips it up, and it goes off of keeper Dave Ledger. Adria were protesting that there should have been an offside there, but I think it's falling on deaf ears as the play goes on. But certainly another solid opportunity for Americo Tintalo for Pat Marios. Mike Svalina now sending it forward, looking for Amit Garg. Garg can't get to it, and Pat Marios clears into the middle. Palladino and McTaggart with it. McTaggart for Pat Marios. And that time, Tintalo was offside.
The first time around, John, it was difficult to call. It was one of these situations you almost had to review the tape. But there's a situation where Americo looks like he still has his speed, and you've got to be careful with a player like that because he can get in behind you. And if the linesman makes that one mistake, it can cost you dearly.
Regardless, that's, as I mentioned, that's Tintalo's third solid scoring opportunity here in the second half. So certainly that's helping Pat Marios in keeping Croatia Adria at bay. Frank Kuznick with the ball now on that far side for Adria, looking for a little room, trying to get around Joe Hammer. And I believe definitely a foul on that one. A little diving at the end of that play, but the referee had the call there, and the resulting play for Adria will be close to the Pat Mario goal. Andrew Whitson will perform it for Croatia Adria as they're looking to tie it up. They're down 1-0. We're about 25 minutes into this second half. Whitson sends the ball up. Brent Salem gets ahead on it, and Scarcelloni comes down with it easy.
One thing about Marino, the goalie for Pat Marios, is that in order to beat him, it's got to be a great shot. He's an excellent goalie. He's well experienced, certainly knows his position extremely well. So if you're going to score on him, it's got to be a good shot.
Certainly been around with Team Toyota for a number of years, and been a stalwart for them as they were league champions last year. Change of sponsor this year, but essentially the same cast of players with a couple of additions, as we mentioned. Frank Anselmo, who's off right now, and number 16 Izaden Rubai. Andrew Whitson with the looks like a direct, I guess, Frank. The referee's arm is up. Brent Salem with the ball, chips it forward looking for Whitson, and Scarcelloni comes in to play that, sends it forward for Rubai. Just to get back to the Ontario Cup there, as you were mentioning about the under-13 team situation, is that it will be interesting to see what the Ontario Soccer Association does with that team from, I believe it was the Toronto area, who were supposed to make an appearance and didn't. I'm not sure what disciplinary situations are in line for that, and you know, we nonetheless congratulate that team. A win is a win, and that's the way people look at it in the paper, and they move on to the next round. We're not sure who their opponents will be, but as I mentioned, congratulations to both those teams, as well as Pat Marios for advancing in the Ontario Cup. Back to our action. Brent Salem tries to get around Rob Scarcelloni, and it goes into touch. And Pat Marios, or correction, Croatia Adria will have the throw-in. Approximately 17 minutes left here in the second half as Frank Kuznick battles for the ball and comes away with it. Kuznick and Rob McTaggart collide. And Adria's starting to pick up the pace a little, Frank, and starting to become more aggressive as they have to.
Yeah, and if you look at it, it's people like Frank who are trying to now become a factor in the game, and rightly so, because he's got the ability to do it.
And number 15, Frank Anselmo, is going to check back in for Pat Marios. I guess he's worked out the kinks, and he will sub in for number 16, Izaden Rubai. As I mentioned before, Izaden played with the Ontario Soccer League Sudbury United last year, and also plays with the Cambrian indoor team, where he's a student at Cambrian College under Coach Kramer IV. Scarcelloni will send the ball into play for Pat Marios. McTaggart had his go off of his head. Tintalo in on it, and Tintalo with another blast. He is certainly picked Pat Marios up a bit here in the second half, as Croatia Adria is going to sub in number 12, Joe Snoffel.
He is their lone striker in the game, and as you say, John has had essentially 4 good scoring opportunities, and that's pretty remarkable for a one forward team almost.
Interesting substitution here, as number 9, Zvonko Vukovic, is substituted for. I'm not quite sure why Coach McPherson would do that, seeing as Zvonko is one of the bigger players for Adria, and I think they need that height, but obviously there's a reason, maybe showing a little fatigue, we're not sure, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Pat Marios now with the throw-in. Rob Scarcelloni back to Joe Hammer. Hammer up for Scarcelloni. Cristo almost lost it there. D'Agostino sends it forward, looking for Dan Palladino. D'Agostino heads it back out harm's way. Cristo tried to get to that ball, but Mike Svalina picks it up for Croatia Adria. Svalina back to Pressot. Pressot up for Amit Garg. Garg with it. Garg to Svalina. Svalina being marked by Rob McTaggart. It's back to Andrew Whitson. Whitson looking for Garg, and it's back. Tantalo's going to get that ball again. 1 against 3, and Tantalo still has the ball. Getting a little help from Frank Anselmo, but it doesn't connect as Brent Salem picks it up now. Salem over to Pressant. Tantalo now with it. Tantalo to Rob McTaggart. McTaggart back to Joe Hammer. Frank Anselmo with it. Goes into touch.
I think in the last series for Croatia, where they were moving actually very well up the free field with a lot of nice passes and good control, but I think at this stage in the game they've got to get inside the box, and somehow they have to move the ball in that area.
As Pressot has the ball go off of Frank Cristo. Cristo now with it. Cristo back to Fabiani. Fabiani up to McTaggart. McTaggart gives it back to Fabiani, looking for Dan Palladino, but it's picked up by Belgio. Up to Svalina. Svalina and Kuznek with them. Amit Garg going on that far side, but a weak pass, and it goes over the end line off of Pat Marios. But certainly, as we mentioned, Adria's starting to look a little more aggressive, as they are going to have to if they want to get on equal terms here.
Yeah, and then the question is whether they'll have enough to continue the pressure, because literally that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to put pressure on for the remainder of this game, because Pat and Maria knows very well that they're going to have to defend like they've never defended before.
As Frank Kuznek cannot get a solid piece of his skull on the leather of the ball to go to the net, it goes over the end line, and the goal kick for Pat Marios. We've got about 15 minutes left in this contest, barring any extra time or injury time, and Scarcelloni, I know, is going to take his time because Pat Marios doesn't want Adria with the ball. 1-0 here. Pat Marios up. As I mentioned, 15 minutes to go or thereabouts, and you're watching senior men's soccer here on TV7. There will be another game next week here on TV7. I'm not quite sure what the matchup will be, but watch for the listings on Channel 7 and you will know. As Pressot has the ball and loses it, Dan Palladino getting in there, and he got a little too far in to get a good shot off. Frank Cristo sends the ball ahead. Frank Kuznek now with it for Adria. Kuznek and Cristo battling. Snoffel with it now. Snoffel sending it forward. It's off of Rob Scarcelloni. Rob McTaggart sending it for Dan Palladino. Svalina now with it for Adria. Svalino and Palladino going after it. Svalina comes away with it. Frank Kuznek ends up with the ball. Kuznek pushed by Joe Hammer, and the obstruction call, I believe it would be. And Adria looking to set up for an opportunity on goal. Mike Svalina will set up, as Pat Marios has set up in a loose wall, probably trying to set up the offside. Frank Kuznek gets ahead on it, and it goes over the end line.
Both teams seem to be getting a little weary, and that's understandable this late in the game. But yet you don't really see any real threats in terms of Croatia being able to mount the kind of attack that could potentially put that ball in the net.
Certainly that's what they need at this point. Time is rapidly dwindling. I think the adage is with Pat Mario's up, the clock isn't moving fast enough, and Croatia Adria enough, it's not moving slow enough. Scarcelloni sends the ball into play. Belgio sends over looking for Snoffel. He can't control it. And Pat Marios will once again have the throw in. About 10-11 minutes left here in the second half. As we mentioned, Friday, July 27th, if you're not doing anything that evening, come out here to Queen's Athletic Field, the Sudbury All-Stars versus the Hamilton Steelers of the Canadian Soccer League. Listen and check your local media outlet, be it the Sudbury Star, the radio stations, or MCTV, and they'll let you know exactly what's happening. Certainly a quality soccer match will be coming to Sudbury that evening. Frank Kuznick with the ball now, cleared out by Fabiani as Croatia Adria have to press a bit. Rob McTaggart chips it forward looking for Tantalo. Tantalo's free again. Tantalo a little too far, loses control of it, goes over the end line, and the corner kick for Pat Marios. But right now Croatia Adria pressing a little more, and Pat Marios is just going to send that ball long and let Americo run forward for it. McTaggart with it. McTaggart sending into the middle. Frank Anselmo just wide. Nice opportunity there for Frank Anselmo. Set up very well by Rob McTaggart.
There's a situation where Adria wasn't mentally prepared for that cross. Essentially have one player in front of the box, four Croatians players around him, and lo and behold, who gets his head on the ball? Frank Anselmo. And I think what we're starting to see is maybe that Croatia's sagging a little bit here, maybe more emotionally than anything else.
Brent Salem now up to Frank Kuznick. Kuznick being marked by D'Agostino. Rob McTaggart and Whitson will send it back to Dave Ledger, and Adria is going to try to get something going again. Ledger sends it over to Butrijak. Pressot back to Ledger. Ledger sending it forward to Pavasic. Pavasic with it. Looking forward for Snoffel, but Rob Scarcelloni ends up with it and sends it over to Marino Scarcelloni. Keeper sending it to Fabiani. Fabiani being watched, and he gives it up to Andrew Whitson. Whitson sends it wide for Adrian Belgio. Belgio with it now. Belgio coming in alone. Back over to Svalina, but Svalina can't quite keep control of it.
There's again an opportunity where I think Adrio had an opportunity to move the ball in the box and create a scoring situation. He chose to pass it back towards Mike Svalina and probably lost the opportunity as well as a result of that. But Adrio and both Mike Svalina have played a good game, so maybe it was a fault in that situation, but generally speaking, they've played well tonight.
Pat Mario's with the free kick. Mario D'Agostino sending up to Tantalo. Looking for DiGiacomo, but Svalina ends up with it. Svalina sending over to Amit Garg. Garg up to Frank Kuznick, and Kuznick can't quite get ahead, and it's sent over to Scarcelloni there. Scarcelloni will send it into touch. The throw in for Croatia Adria. Andrew Whitson can't quite control it, but the foul was called, and Adria will have the opportunity with the ball.
Not sure what that infraction was, to be honest with you, but I guess the referee saw something there.
He's down there and we're up here, so Brent Salem sends into play. Dan Palladino almost overran that, and he's battling with Whitson. Svalina picks up now for Adria. Svalina with it. Back to Butrijak. Garg keeps it into play. Garg down that side with Belgio. Nice pass. Belgio to Garg. Garg coming in. Sliding tackle by Marino DiGiacomo. It goes off of Garg, and Pat Marios will have the goal kick.
That was an excellent scoring opportunity. Actually, two young players combining there to create something for Croatia.
And certainly they need it at this point. We've got about 7 minutes left.
This is one of the better games that I've seen Adria Belgio play number 8 for Croatia. He's starting to come along. He's still a young player, but I think if you look at this game very closely, he's been a factor and probably one of the better players out there for Croatia this evening.
Certainly, if I'm not mistaken, he was with the provincial under-16 team last year, so you know that he does have some talent to be recognized as a provincial team member. The ball sent forward. Pat Mario's Frank Anselmo picks it up, looking for Tantalo. Tantalo has it go off of him into touch, and the throw-in for Croatia Adria deep in their end. And also, the nice thing we've seen tonight too, Frank, it's been a pretty cleanly played contest. You know, not too many fouls, a couple of yellow cards, but for the most part, very well played.
Absolutely, nothing too serious. Both teams giving a good effort.
Rob McTaggart with the throw-in. Andrew Whitson heads it over the end line, and we'll have the throw-in for Pat Mario, or correction, the throw-in, the corner kick for Pat Mario's. They're trying to look to salt this game away. They're up 1-0 here. 6 minutes or thereabouts left in this contest.
Pat Mario is notorious on their set plays. They're very dangerous. This is a situation where you got to be very attentive because they can create a situation. They're experienced enough to do it.
Christo with the bending ball. Nice play. Nice ball there from the corner from Frank Christo. It bent very dangerously into that box area.
Now, Pat Mario's is the kind of team that you don't want to give a lot of corner kicks to. They just have this knack of being able to put it in the box, creating a situation, and they get a good number of goals that way.
Brent Salem with the goal kick for Adria. It's headed into the middle by Pat Mario's. Christo ends up with it now for Pat Mario's. Christo with a bit of a knuckleball shot there that Dave Ledger had to punch out. I don't think Dave was quite sure what was happening to that ball, and he'll send it over the end line, and he'll hustle to get to it because he knows that time is of the essence right now, and Pat Mario's will have the corner kick.
There's a good example of some experience and skill. He's standing approximately 40 yards out and being able to hit that ball in the air and get it on net, have that ball go up and come back down. Excellent shot.
Christo will perform the corner kick again, and I believe there was some shoving in there on the part of Pat Mario's. I think we're seeing some delay tactics there by Pat Mario's, and the ball will be put into play once again by Brent Salem. Salem sending it forward. Christo heads it. Belgio ends up with it now for Adria. Belgio to Whitson. Whitson has it go off of Palladino. Belgio now with it, battling Frank Anselmo for the ball. Nice bit of handling there by Belgio. Sends it forward, and Hammer will just clear the area. And there we have it. Obviously, my watch was out a bit further than referee Pietro D'Angelo's. There's your final score, ladies and gentlemen. Pat Mario's 1, Croatia Adria 0. On behalf of Frank Malvasso, I'm John Metcalf. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.